Hello, creative people. This is Catherine with the Motley Art, and I have an art journal page today that I'm going to show. It is a 4x4 page. I am using Sea Maiden by Authentique, which is a bit of an older collection that I had in my stash. I used it to make a couple other items, and now I'm just trying to use up the scraps by doing some smaller collage art journal pages. And I am sharing the process of that with you. So I started out here showing you kind of the supplies that I planned on using. I did kind of pull some stuff together. Didn't really have a big plan, but whenever I start pulling supplies together, my brain starts to kind of think a little bit of like, well, how do I want to use this and how do I want to use that? I had made that die cut that I originally for this collection, and I really wanted to try to use it on one of these art journal pages. So while it's not my main focal point, I did want to make sure that what I used for my focal image was going to play well with it so that I could really make sure that it got onto one of these pages, because I do like it. I think it's very pretty. Now, I did want to go ahead and grunge some stuff up a little bit, make it look a little more vintage, and I tried originally to use a blending brush that had some black on it. So, of course, that's what came off was the black instead of the toffee brown. But I just went with it and did the whole sides, and then I'm putting the toffee brown color on top. This is an ink from Close to My Heart that I'm using. And I really like how this came out with having kind of the two levels of grunge to them. But then for the rest of the items, I'm going to just use the toffee, and I'm going to try to make sure I didn't have any black. I did switch my pad so that the toffee would come through instead of the black. So I guess you really can't use, if you use a pad that had black on it, you don't want to try to use it for brown. So I went around my focal image, even though I had previously colored this with a different ink, which right now I do not remember what color it was because that was like a year to maybe a year and a half ago. I still wanted to add a little bit of the brown to the edges just to try to also make it look a little bit more vintage and also make it cohesive with those other items that I just did that with. And then I'm going to stick these items down and get my first couple of layers down. And you know, that one piece that has the different fish on it, as you saw in the very beginning, I did cut that from a scrap because I really liked that shape and I thought it would be interesting to try to use a shape like that. I had watched one YouTube video from Art Proof that they were giving you kind of prompts on a collage item, things that you had to use within the collage, and then you could do whatever you wanted. And they started off with some triangles, and I thought that would be hard to use, but it actually ended up not being as hard as I thought. So I've been trying in some of my more recent art journal pieces to think about that, to think about using a shape that I wouldn't normally use. And I thought this shape isn't quite triangular. I guess it's a tripod, not tripod. That's something completely different. Oh my goodness. Um, I'm sure you know the word, but I thought it was kind of more of that type of shape. And I don't use that type of shape very often, so I thought it would be interesting. Give it this whole composition a little bit more interest. Now, what I wanted to use as my focal image was this lady, and this was a 3x4 card, journal card that came with the pattern paper. And I decided that I knew I didn't want to use the whole 3x4 because obviously my whole composition is 4x4, so that would be too large. So I thought it would be interesting though to do a partial cutout of her, because I did want some of the sea. I liked that part of the image, so I wanted some of that in there. And I really liked how this just really kind of makes more emphasis on her face by doing that partial cutout. But I did feel like there needed to be a little bit more in the background, and I really wanted to use those polka dots, but in the end I did decide to use the other side, which has just some wood on it. I thought the coloring went better. It helped to give some visual interest, and it helps to pop her out because she was blending in a little bit to the background, but it doesn't take away from her. And I felt the polka dots there that you can see again here on the back, I felt like those were taking away from her. So that's why I decided to use this side instead, but I also crumpled it up, and it does pop up a little bit off the page. I really liked that. I wanted that effect as well. So I am going to pop her head up a little bit later. You'll see that. But I did decide that I knew at this point that's where I wanted her, and I did put some glue just on the bottom. I'm trying to get a little bit better about how I glue things down when I'm making these collages, because oftentimes you do end up finding that you want to put some stuff behind your image. So if you glue all of it down, you're not going to be able to do that. So I've been doing better about trying to just glue in certain points enough to keep it from moving around, so that when I'm looking at other things, when I'm placing things, it's not going to change where it's at, but not so much that I can't get stuff behind it. So I only put glue on that very bottom. And then I decided that I just felt like it needed a little bit more down there, between her and the die cut. I just wanted to fill that space out a little bit more. So I took some items that I did some fussy cutting, and one item that I had that was a pop out, because there were a few punch out die cuts to this collection that was really fun to use. So I had one of those left that I wanted to use, the shell. I just thought that was nice and would go with it, and I'm going to go ahead and vintage all of that up. So with this collection, I have not always gone to where I've inked things up to make it look really vintagey, but the 3x4 cutouts to me had a very vintage look already. That's what Authentique kind of does, right? They give you a little bit more of a vintage look. So I felt like the other items for this particular art piece needed to feel similar to her. That's what I was trying to do, is make them feel similar to her. So I didn't want anything too stark. I didn't want anything too clean, because the image that was created by Authentique wasn't clean and bright. It was a little bit more of the vintage look. So I did decide I had cut out a while ago a few doilies from tissue paper, and I decided to add one back there. I just wanted to give a little extra attraction behind her head. I just thought it looked cute, and fit in with the feel and the vibe of this particular piece. So here is where I'm going to start popping her head up, and these foam pop dots that I have are not the best. They're almost too sticky. They're like so sticky it's hard sometimes to get the backing off without the foam kind of starting to tear apart. But I work with it for a little while, and I get a few on there. I really wanted her head to have a good bit of height up there, so I end up doing a couple more and trying to put a couple more around so that it wasn't just one. So hopefully over time it won't sink too badly. So I kind of fight with it for a little while, but I get there in the end, and I really like the effect. I love that it's kind of coming up at you, and the rest of her body is down a little bit. Now, I had forgotten I wanted to, just around her head, I had wanted to put a little bit of a line there. Um, I just wanted to put some pen on the edge to keep it from being really, really bright. So I did that after I had stuck it down. I do not recommend that. It's very dangerous. You could end up putting marks in places you don't want. But I went for it, and it worked out this time. So now I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to put some small pearls, because I wanted to embellish this a little bit with some pearls. And at first I thought I was just going to kind of scatter them, kind of behind her. But I decided in the end that I liked the idea of more embellishing what she's wearing, adding the pearls to that to make it look a little bit special. I love that kind of look. I think it's really fun when you have a 2D picture and then you embellish with some charms or some pearls or some rhinestones and give it that little 3D edge. I remember when I was younger, years and years ago, when I was younger, there were some people selling those types of pictures of like Marilyn Monroe and those really famous actresses, and they would add the rhinestones to the picture. And I don't know why, but it always just has captured my attention as being really interesting to look at. So I also add a few down there to the die cut, because that type of die cut kind of reminds me of sort of like the wrought iron, where it usually does have some like purling kind of in the wrought iron itself. So I really like the way that looked. And then I still just wanted to get one little blue flower onto this layout. So I, went ahead and vintaged that up and stuck that in the back there. With all of these, I have been trying to add some text onto them. I really like that. I like when you can work text into your visual art piece. And with this one, I wanted it to blend. I did not want it to pop out on its own. I really wanted it to blend in. So I used some of my scrap with the sea, and I used the toffee and I stamped lovely on it. And then I'm going to stick it up there at the top behind her. So it's still in a very prominent place on the art piece, but it's not pulling away from my focal point, which is the lady. And that's really what I wanted to make sure, was that she was the thing that your eye went to first, and then you kind of encompass everything else, right? Your eye starts there and then kind of works around the piece. So I just love making these smaller pieces because I I suffer from project fatigue. I don't know if anybody else does, but I definitely do. So when I'm trying to work on a big piece, I just tend to have a problem of putting it down and not wanting to go back to it. And I get midway through and I'm just like, I just can't. I don't feel it anymore. I don't like it. So, but then when you push and you make yourself finish it, you love it. But I find these smaller pieces that I can do in an hour, in half an hour, it's just so much easier. I feel so much more accomplished, and I just love the look of them and how this book is coming to fruition. Thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe and like if you haven't already, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a very creative day.